Level B1. Lesson 2. Listening. Disposable heroes. Nakagawa and other workers also had no idea the reactors were in such a precarious state. Information wasn't getting out to the workers in the plant amid the chaos following the earthquake and tsunami. Nakagawa says he wasn't aware of the extent of the radiation levels where he was working in the days after the twin natural disasters turned into a nuclear disaster until a Newsweek reporter pointed it out. Really? Gee, I didn't know that, he says. And finally, he didn't want to look like a coward. Instead, Nakagawa would become a hero, one of a group of workers dubbed the Fukushima 50 by the global media in search of a cogent way to cover an indescribable tragedy. In the coming days and weeks, hundreds more would join the effort, living off packaged food and sleeping in jam-packed conference rooms to deal with a crisis that would soon become the worst nuclear accident since Chernobyl. Like the firefighters who rushed into the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001, the workers were called the heroes of last year's triple disasters known as 3/11 in Japan. The international media quickly lionized them as the faceless heroes who stayed behind, and the Japanese press also latched on to the meme. But now in Japan these men are mostly forgotten. As the nation prepares for the first anniversary of the tsunami, the Japanese are preoccupied with radiation fears, the anti-nuclear debate, and bashing the operator of the Fukushima plant, Tokyo Electric Power Co., TEPCO, for its response to the crisis. The workers who risked their lives remain faceless and nameless. Increasingly, they are also voiceless because they fear being associated with the now vilified power company if they speak about what went on in the plant. 6 workers spoke to Newsweek on the condition that their real names not be used so they could provide a rare first-hand account of the fear and courage of these men, as well as describe what they consider unsafe practices during the initial stages of the recovery effort. In the first 24 hours, Nakagawa and his crew cleared the rubble and debris at the plant, eventually making way for the elite firefighters from Tokyo who were ordered to douse the overheated reactors with water. When he returned to the headquarters building, he says it looked like the field hospital of a battered army. Halls were packed with exhausted workers, chattering about the rising temperatures in the reactors and the radiation levels in the plant. Some TEPCO workers were in hazmat suits during the recovery effort, but Nakagawa was not. He was still in his company-issued gray cotton work clothes. My mind went blank. I thought I was toast. He began to think about how to get out of the place without being noticed. Meanwhile, the reactors were heading toward a meltdown. With no source of power to inject water into the overheating reactors, the fuel rods became exposed, filling the reactor building with hydrogen gas. TEPCO workers raced to inject seawater, but they were too late. A few minutes after they were ready to do so, Reactor Unit 1 exploded. I thought this country was finished, says Jiro Kimura, who had worked at the plant his entire adult life as a TEPCO employee. Moments after the first reactor exploded, Nakagawa got a call from his boss who frantically asked, "What the hell are you doing? Get out of the place." By then, everyone around Nakagawa was talking about the doomsday scenario of all 6 reactors blowing up. I couldn't take it anymore, he says, and as soon as he noticed that few onlookers were around, he bolted from the building and drove home. But the hamlet was a ghost town. His family and neighbors had evacuated, but he didn't have enough gas to drive to the evacuation center. There was little food left at home, although the electricity was back on. Then his boss called, offering to bump up his salary 10 times if he went back. He called acquaintances at TEPCO, who were still clearing rubble and fixing power lines along the perimeter of the plant, and asked them to pick him up. That may have been a big mistake. 2 days later, he saw a pink mushroom cloud as Reactor Unit 3 blew up. He was fixing power lines along the south perimeter of the plant at the time, still in his cotton work clothes. Despite the popular narrative that these men worked at post-tsunami Fukushima out of heroism, many of them had different motives, like Nakagawa, whose company had ties to TEPCO. There were day laborers from the poorest neighborhoods of Tokyo and Osaka who went to Fukushima for the money. Some were members of the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, say workers interviewed for this story. The practice continued until the summer, when a law was passed that made it illegal for companies to have contact with organized criminals. But as long as these people were willing to work, it didn't matter where they came from, the workers say.